Hello and welcome to Recovery Stories Have Power. My name is Oliver Books. We are so excited to bring you 4 very special podcast episodes throughout the months of June and July. The Recovery Leadership Summit hosted nearly 500 people from all across the recovery space. We had 4 amazing keynote speakers and came together as a community to learn how to grow from one another. On today's episode, I am joined by our first keynote presenter, Sparkle Lindsay. Sparkle is an author, peer coach, and motivational speaker who has an incredible journey she was able to share with us. Without further ado, my conversation with Sparkle Lindsay. So Sparkle, welcome to Recovery Stories Have Power. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story?
Well, I'm a motivational keynote speaker and an author and a recovery coach, international professional facilitator. My business is Sparkle LLC, the light at the end of the tunnel. And what I do is I help coaches become great coaches. It has been a wonderful journey for me. Obviously, May 4th, 2024, I hit 5 years of sobriety. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah,
so
that's amazing.
it couldn't be any better, I would say right now. I'm seeing things. I don't know, people tell you a lot about 5 years. I'm starting to believe it. Totally. Good stuff, great stuff. Just a sense of layers of gratitude that have just come upon me in the past probably month. And I'm just forever grateful for everything that, has come to fruition,
Absolutely. Yeah, we caught your keynote a little bit earlier, and you have an incredible story.
Thank you.
Filled with twists and turns.
Yes.
There are so many amazing stories just throughout the recovery sphere, but it's so every single one. What I love about recovery stories is they're all so completely different.
Yes.
But they all have similar through lines of like hope and gratitude and self-discovery, and I think yours really shone through with some of that.
For me, and I'll talk a lot about it in my story, in my life. I still have every week something is going on, Oliver. Okay, but I will say that from the age 21, and I really talked about it in the keynote. That I was the oldest of 5. And in corporate, I was the fixer. And I talk a lot about this in some of my videos and stuff about how being the fixer, I thought was like the coolest thing at that time, was actually like being a yes person.
I can relate. I can absolutely relate. Yeah.
And I was like, so that's not the coolest thing. This whole time I'm running around doing all these things, but kind of to get back to the story, I started out college basketball player, I graduated 4.2 GPA from high school. And then I jumped into Colorado Mesa University, where I got a full ride basketball scholarship to play ball. And that was where really the first twist happened. I ended up getting really sick. I woke up one morning and I could not walk. I went to the doctor and he told me that I had myasthenia gravis, which was a muscular inflammatory condition. And it kept taking off. Like, I thought I was doing better, and then they said it's just now starting to take its course. So hearing that in the middle of my college career, basketball, everything else, I was like, this is like the end of my career, I was really sad, and I really felt like, am I really never going to walk again? Sure. Do you know what I mean? Sure. 140 pounds to about 107 in about 3 weeks. Everything had kind of been taken away from me at that point. But I'm stubborn. And I was like, yeah, you're going to have to really make me not walk again, because I'm going to figure this out, Yeah. So I did walk again with my perseverance and determination. And, I called my dad and I said, Dad, afterwards he had to go to work that day. He said, I heard the doctor said you ain't gonna walk. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, do you believe that you're not going to walk? And I said, oh, no, no, no. I said, I will be trying to walk till the end of the world if I have to. You know, I have to keep trying. So with that, they found that they did have a certain medicine that they were on that kind of suppressed me. So I started walking again. You know, I really jumped into it. I first started running on treadmills, and I could only go for about a minute, and attacking and knocking would happen at my knees. So I'd have to stop. And it was a lot of pain. Every time I think about it, I'm like, I don't think I've ever felt a pain like that. You know, I haven't had any children, so I'm not going to say nothing. But, you know, ultimately, the knocking at the knees was probably the worst at the time. But then, you know, I walked again. I mean, clearly I'm here, got my legs. Yeah. You know,
I've seen it.
They're moving and grooving. And, you know, Oliver, I played 2 years of college ball again, tried out for the WNBA. Was going to sign to the Sparks, and then I went on ahead and said no. Now, was that one of the hardest decisions of my life? No. It wasn't, because my body still hurt. I had taken my body through the ringer at that point, and I remember getting done with the workout, and I was like, I don't think this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. As much as I love it, my body is hurting still, you know? So I went on ahead, got my bachelor's degree, two concentrations in communications, editorial writing, and public relations. And I did not know what I was getting a communication degree for in 2008. Sure. I did not even know if I really had a story, you know? Clearly, I do, right. But it took a lot of my life. I'm 39, right? It took a lot of life to be like, wow, I can really talk on stages now. Like, I can communicate. I have a story. I feel compelled to speak, and I feel compelled to help whoever's listening to do whatever, you know? But at that point, I did not know why I had the degree. I knew I'd love to communicate. You know, I took some speaking classes, all this, and then I was like, well, what am I going to talk about? So it was very interesting. As I jumped into corporate America, though, afterwards, I became an executive for 3 big box retailers for 15 years as an HR executive. And that was where things got tricky. This is where I just told you about the fixer piece. At that point, I had become the person who could fix everything. You know, just call Sparkle. She'll take care of it. Call Sparkle. She's our man. She's the one that can get it done. And I believe that, coming from an environment of being a team captain and a big sister and being a team-oriented person, sure, they picked the right person for this. Honestly, I just was out there trying to win at what we were doing in the stores. You know what I mean? I didn't realize how exhausting it was, really exhausting me. You know, I didn't realize that. And then I also didn't realize how sick I was, because during that 15 years, I didn't just have myasthenia gravis. I ended up with vitiligo, obviously, and then lupus, fibromyalgia, and Hashimoto's. Which is thyroid. So that piece right there, it just threw me for a loop, because I consistently acquired these autoimmune conditions that produced a lot of pain. And as an athlete, and because of what I had been through, walking through that pain was like really nothing for me. You know what I mean? Like, I had gotten used to walking through the pain, so I didn't even realize how much pain I was in, you know? But my mind knew how much, because I started drinking like crazy. Started drinking, and I, you know, ended up getting promoted, obviously, to be an executive. So I already had the money, and I didn't start drinking until I was about 26 years old. And then I had a friend, because I couldn't handle my alcohol. I ended up getting drunk off of 2 Mike's Hard Lemonades. And then they were like, well, here, why don't you try this cocaine, and you can, you'll feel better. And I was like, the rest was history. So there goes there goes that. Yep. And I just felt like I was just using it around the clock. Mm-hmm. And using it around the clock for me was, I felt like it was fine, And I think it's because I had known my job so well that I could maneuver, but inside I was dying. Absolutely. You know, it's like looking at a big plaque and it's got all the nice stuff on it. And then you look in the inside and it's just a deep, dark hole. And that's where I was, you know, and everybody else seen this, but they didn't see this, the inside. So with that, I continued working and I continued doing what I had to do. And then one day in particular, I had a employee who had not been showing up to work for a while, and he was looking for housing. An exceptional worker just couldn't find housing. So I was like, okay, cool. Let me help him find housing. We should be good to go. He didn't show up. And then that day, by the way, I'm hungover, no bumps, no shots. I had absolutely nothing that day, which was wild to me because that was really unheard of. But I couldn't get it in time.
Recovering myself that
I couldn't get it in time. So I really was like, man, I got to go to work like this. This is so messed up, right? So, so basically, obviously, my higher power was taking care of me, because if I would have had anything on me, it could have been a lot worse, right? I mean, it already was really bad, what I'm about to say, and obviously trigger warning. But as he came in, I asked him, you know, I said, hey, I got something for you. And he shrugged my shoulder. He said, I got to go to the bathroom. You know, he shrugged his shoulders and went to the bathroom. And immediately I got this feeling in the pit of my stomach. And, you know, I'm a person who feels a lot. I have empathic abilities, and I enjoy and embrace them now. But back then, the feeling of feeling someone else's everything is a lot. You know, it was a lot for me. And I was hungover. There was nothing to mask those feelings. And I was like, something just doesn't feel right, you know? So I went back to the office. I ran, grabbed the email that said they had housing. And then I walked towards the bathroom. And the closer I got, the worse the intuition was. I was like, something just doesn't feel good, you know? So I stood by the bathroom door. I was like, I really don't want to look like, you know, like a creeper.
Totally.
But at the same time, I just really want to make his day. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because he didn't come in happy.
Sure.
And I sat there 2-3 minutes and I said, something didn't feel right. I'll just open the door. And I opened the door and he shot himself. And I fainted.
Yeah.
When I came to, I was like, okay, did I get shot? Yeah. Am I okay? You know, that was the first thing. Then I was like, what even happened, right? Because my initial thoughts were, you know, maybe suicide attempt. I don't know. Just something didn't feel right. So my thoughts were just to see, maybe he's having a hard time or whatever. But I didn't think that. And then the last thing I was thinking was, where was I going to get my next hit? Yeah. When was and where was I going to get it, right? And for that, you know, I knew then that moment, it changed my life forever. It took a lot of therapy, although at the time, I didn't want therapy.
Sure.
It was a sign of weakness. You can forget that. I'm not doing it because I'm strong and I can make it happen. Sure. So I didn't have therapy, and all of a sudden I started spiraling like nightmares. And then I was drinking and using cocaine around the clock because I didn't want to have the nightmares. And then, I remember calling my family and just being like, I feel like I'm out of my mind. Like I can't focus. I keep seeing this guy, you know, dead, you know, and it's getting me. And that day I said, I just don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do, you know? So I get a call from headquarters, and I said, oh, Lord, they going to fire me. So the first thing I was thinking is they done found out I've been using, they going to fire me.
Sure.
And I'm like, should I even go and see? So I said, yeah, okay, I'll be down there. You know, so I went down there. And I walked in, and there was all these faces, these people, right? They're just looking happy, and it looks like it's a party. And I'm thinking in my head, like, this don't look like some people who gonna fire me. So I walk in, I see my boss, and there's a table, right? And where the table's at, there's a white piece of paper on it. So I go in, and I'm like, dang, all these people here to see me get fired. I was like, this is about to be for real.
Uh-oh.
I was like, this is kind of brutal, you know?
Right.
So I'm sitting there, and he looks at me, and I look at him, and he goes, turn it over. So I turn over the white piece of paper. It says 125K. He said, we want to promote you. I about passed out. I'm thinking in my head, like, well, so the person that was using in my head, I was thinking, oh, I can sustain my addiction with this easy. I got me some cash flow.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna be able to cover this up. I'm gonna be able to do this. Look at this is the little demon on my shoulder. He's like, we about to be partying. We gonna have a good time. We gonna be all right. And then the angel, on my shoulder was like, how long are you gonna keep this up? How long are you going to keep this up before you end up dead? And I looked at my boss, and I looked at that sheet of paper, 125K. And I said, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to turn it down. And he looked at me, and he said, you want me to save your position? I said, I'm not well, and I need help. I said, and I know you guys can see that. And in my head, it was more like, because of all the accomplishments that were happening, and because of all the big things that were going on, and I was right in the middle of it, they were succeeding. These things were happening. They thought, I'm willing to sacrifice everything I have to make this happen. But the only thing I kept remembering is that throughout this entire time, I literally felt like I was screaming in a room full of people, yelling as loud as I could. And nobody was listening. It was like, because the numbers were good, there was nothing for us to yell at her for. But in our reality, there was so much stuff going on. But that wasn't what it was. It was about make the numbers, do what we have to do, and we don't care if you live or not. That's what it felt like to me.
Sure.
So that day was my, not exit interview, but I put in my 2 weeks, and I said, unfortunately, I'm going to turn it down. And I'm actually leaving the company. I don't know what it was that made me think this way. I had no plans in place to leave that day. I thought they was gonna make me leave, but
so you're at least prepared on that front.
Exactly. So when I left, I said, wow, I must have really not wanted to be a part of this any longer. Sure. So I got out, ended up going to Blackhawk, spent a lot of money, ended up in jail. Ended up in jail. And as I was sitting in the cell, I said, Miss Lindsay, what are you doing? Nobody's coming. You got yourself in this mess. You better figure out how to get yourself out of it. And I knew no one was coming because I couldn't remember any numbers. I was like, 9, 7. Dang, I was like, okay, come on. Come on, God. You got to give me at least one number.
He did give you one number. It was just that 9, maybe the 7.
The 9, I said, fine, I'm just going to lay back down on my punishment. So after that, though, I got out of jail. I had a prison sentence that was overturned, which was wild. Ended with no felonies, which was wild. Throughout my journey so far, no DUIs, wild. Okay, because so all of these things were like just signs, like you need to make that change, right? I was like in contemplation mode. So like 2 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the morning, I'd be like all gung ho on getting help. And then that 6 o'clock come, I'd have my bump and my drink, and I was just drinking. And then my ex-fiance at the time told me that if I left to get help, I was not ever allowed to come back. He said, because we're supposed to be in this together, and I can't believe you're leaving me. 2 weeks went by, and I pondered hard. And I said, I gotta go. And in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock, I got to my grandparents' house, knocked on the door, and I said, I'm ready. I got there, got to treatment. 5 years later, I never looked back.
Beautiful.
Probably one of the, I had to make so many different decisions that I thought that it wasn't selfish, and I didn't realize that I had stepped up for me. I really didn't realize it at that time. But every time I tell this story, I think about how much of a yes woman I wasn't, because I still was able to put myself first. When it came to my recovery, took a while.
Sure.
But I still was able to say no in some of the clutch times. Okay, 125K, I could have probably still been partying with that for all we know.
Absolutely.
Saying that I'm not going to play in the WNBA. I mean, my autoimmunes were all over the place. They still are. There are things I have to maintenance, but I said no, and I have to give myself credit for that, because I did have some sort of boundaries. At one point, I thought I had none because I was a fixer, but somewhere in there, my angel was protecting me. And till this day, I feel like I'm highly protected from that, because the more sober we get, the more aware we become, and the more mindful we are about what's going on around us and about the things that are happening to us from the inside out. And it just really goes from being recovered to living.
Yeah, I get that.
Yes. When you start to put those together, you become the well-oiled machine you deserve to be.
Totally.
And being able to see that part, right? And then go to treatment. And treatment, I ended up going, and I'll never forget it. Was like, I went to go to this treatment. I did not have any money.
Sure. Okay,
I remember this. No money. Parker Valley Hope I went to. And then I ended up at Peaks Recovery. I didn't have any money. And I remember talking to Chris Burns, and he said, just show up. And I said, but sir, I don't have any money. And I said, when you don't show up, then people don't open the doors. I said, so are you going to tell me that the door is going to be open? So he said, no, we coming to pick you up. So I didn't believe him. And I'm leaving the other place, and I'm talking about, I'm giving some speech, because I really was not ready to be sober at that time. I thought, right? I wasn't. So I was talking to my ex, and I said, okay, when I get out of here, this is Parker Valley Hope. When I get out of Parker Valley Hope, we're going to go camping, and we're getting ready to tear it apart. We are going to bring the beers. We are doing it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So he's sitting out there, and I'm giving a speech of a lifetime. Okay. Like, I will cherish this moment. And everybody's like, she's going to do it. She's going to be sober. We love it.
Yeah.
I went to walk out that building. I have my bags ready to go. I went to walk out because I had done, it was 30 days. Yeah. And my ex is looking over at me, and I'm like, I'm almost scot-free because we about to be having some fun camping. I'm grabbing my bags, Oliver. I'm walking. And I'm looking at him, and all of a sudden I hear, are you Sparkle Lindsay? And I go, yeah. And she goes, yeah, you're, the van is here to pick you up for your next treatment center. And she said, Chris Burns said he was going to come get you. I said, oh, he's for real. So I look at my ex, and I look at her, and I look at him, and I go, okay. I got in that van, and I did so much work on myself, so much work from the inside out. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Yeah. And at my graduation, I said, now they ain't asked me for no bill or nothing. So Are they going to ask me now?
Get a little nervous really quick.
I'm like, they said, we want you to speak at your graduation. I said, well, they're going to be charging me for that too, So I get up there, I speak, he gives me a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, people in these piece of papers.
Sure.
So gives me a piece of paper and he says, open it. And I said, this is the bill. So I open it up and I go, and I said, well, do you have a payment? He said, just keep opening it. I said, oh, okay, just keep turning the pages. And I'm just looking, I'm like, this is a lot of money. This is far more than what I just turned down.
Yeah.
I'm turning it. I get to the end and there's a 0 on it. And he circles it and says, your life is priceless.
No.
He paid for my whole recovery. Oh. He paid for my whole recovery. And I just looked at him and I said, okay, what do I got to do? Yeah. He said, you don't got to do nothing. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a peer, but I didn't know what peer was. Sure. He explained to me, he said, you need to go to a few places and take the classes and become a peer recovery coach. Yeah. So I got there and my journey as a peer started. And that's when I started understanding and getting underneath the value of being a peer coach, but then also walking alongside other peer coaches. And my journey with being a peer coach, I started when I was like 6 months. And I went through a lot as a peer, a lot. Yeah. 6 months in, I learned the curriculum. It was great, but I still hadn't gotten underneath it. And getting underneath the curriculum means, how did it pertain to me? The self-reflection piece. At first I went through it and it was just a training. But then as I became a facilitator of the curriculum, I started finding myself in it every time I coached it, every time I trained it. And I would find layers and levels to these books that they're the greatest library ever because they're self-reflection, and no matter where you're at any given time of the day, or if you were 89 years old, it always hits differently. So once that happened, I realized that we needed help. We need support as peer coaches. And I realized, my first time losing someone to fentanyl, it was my recovery. And the only thing I could think is I started getting that shame and guilt feeling like maybe I'm not doing something right. Maybe me as the coach needs to take a step back. And I had people there to support me, to love me, to say, hey, 85% of us don't make it. 15% of us do. And I learned to sit in those emotions. I was angry and upset and mainly hurt and sad by the addiction and what it's done to a lot of us, and I was only at about 9 months when that happened, so for me as a new peer, it could have easily scared me away if I didn't have the support, or I could have easily spiraled and went back out. Yeah. Obviously I didn't. And obviously I had the people with me to support me. Yes. And that's why I opened up Sparkle, the Light at the End of the Tunnel, because as much as we talk about people who are battling the addiction, we still have to realize we have peer coaches that are brave enough and have the courage to walk alongside people in their beautiful disasters all day long. Yeah. But that doesn't mean we don't have our own.
Yeah. And that compassion fatigue, really building that community. We have to be in community.
Yes,
we have to. Lift each other up. That's the only thing that works. Seems to work. Yeah.
It's the only thing. And what most people are thinking is, well, hey, let's take our coaches, let's get them paid, let's do what they have to do. But then if something happens to them, is there a succession plan?
Sure.
Do we have a place for them to call home or get help if they do have a reoccurrence, right? If they go back out, Who takes care of them?
Yeah.
And on top of that, do they have someone to take care of them? Are we holding them accountable to have programs and to work their programs thoroughly? I don't care what program you got, but how are you working it? Are you becoming a best version of yourself daily? Or are you just saying you have it? Are you just checking the boxes, right? And a lot of this goes into the training. You know, I use the CCAR curriculum, but for me, I use it as an African-American woman, Indigenous, LGBTQIA, and how we see this curriculum, how I see the curriculum being that all of these different types of beings for me, I see it like what is really happening right now in 2024. And I teach it that way. I train it that way, because although it's a training and it's curriculum, how do we take it into the present moment so we can be where our feet are, we can stay grounded, we can have the supports we need to be the best version of ourselves, right? We can also work to be better peers and give and have more creativity to transpire and expand our mind to greater lengths. But if we don't know that that stuff exists, or if we can't say that we need it, and if people are not going to listen, then it's not going to be as effective, you know?
Of course. Yeah, you mentioned how your identities and the culmination of and the intersections of all your identities impact how you approach peer coaching. Can you speak more to that? I'm curious.
Yeah, how I approach it. You know, I grew up, I'm a Black woman. The differences and being, you know, a woman at the same time, and also, you know, being bisexual at the same time, and Native American. I am really a part of people who are going through suppression all the time.
Sure.
And a lot of times, I don't see people like me all the time on screens and saying that they recover. And so being that and being those different, you know, those different beings, for me, shows that we do.
Yes.
And that there is nothing that is going to change the gift of a human recovering. It doesn't matter what we look like, but our relatability is important. Sure. You know, for being a Black woman, a lot of us in the Black homes, therapy did not exist. You put the H on your chest, you handle it, that's it. There was no like, I have problems, can I go? It was a sign of weakness. And now it's become a major strength in the communities, but it has just recently started blooming and blossoming in the Black communities, Latina communities, those types of things where we know that working on our mental health is key. But it's taken some time for us to get there. And it's people like myself and a few others that have said, it's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to say that I think something doesn't feel right, or I feel like I might be hearing voices, or there's things that can help us with this instead of trying to hide it or hindering who we are.
Yeah.
You know, and we have to be able to see that in all facets, though. It's important. And so that's why I say that, you know, I can explain the curriculum to pretty much anybody.
Yeah.
But when it's maybe someone who comes from, you know, the north side or east side of New Jersey, they get lost in the curriculum differently.
Sure.
It's crazy to see how many people get lost in the beautiful curriculum that's there and learn to pertain it to what's actually going on for them in their world.
Yeah, we are all products of our circumstance, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So as you've been in recovery for these last 5 years, what does that mean to you? How has your relationship with your recovery grown and changed in that time?
You know, recovery for me is staying present every day. It's being where my feet are. And, you know, I will say it's allowing life to live me. It's being able to see things differently. And I would say differently because every day I see something different. And I enjoy it because I believe that a lot of the stuff that I think I'm seeing differently has been there for a very long time.
Totally.
But in my eyes, I'm like, has that always been there? And someone's like, yeah, Sparks, that was there like when you were born. I'm like, well, now that I'm sober, it looks really good.
Oh, that one hits real close to home.
Also, it's mindfulness. It's being mindful and aware of what's happening around us. You know, there's a lot going on in our nation. There's a lot. Okay, and we have what we call chaos. And one thing I could say about chaos is I love it because the more chaos we know, the better we know how to get into position and make things happen.
Sure.
When we're unaware of the chaos, that's when it overcomes us. So the fact that I can actually see the chaos and I'm actually like, ooh, I could go here and ooh, I could. There's so many opportunities right now to get into position, especially with this recovery movement happening. And say something, stand up, show out, be the best version of yourself in these positions. Things are changing. The jail systems, they're changing. The education systems, they're changing. School systems, education systems, it's about the same, excuse me. But also jail systems. But not only that, just the way people look at recovery in general. And we're not, I mean, so when you look at all of that happening, and then also the cost of living. We look at people getting out of prison early or getting out of prison after 30 years into a world of fentanyl. We have a fentanyl epidemic that's global right now.
Yeah.
So everything is breaking down for us to revamp the systems and get into position. And we are the group, I'm 39 years old. I feel that a lot of us millennials are the group that have to take it to the next level. You know, because we know how to identify with our, you know, maybe our older crew. That's like you do the work, you get it done, you move on. And then we also know how to identify with our more sensitive crew of people who are younger. And they have learned to feel. And they are feeling everything and they're more sensitive, which is okay too. We're right in the middle.
Yeah.
So perfect. It's just been beautiful to see all of that, you know?
That's a really wonderful perspective to have on bridging gaps where we're able to. I think that
Yeah.
that seems like that's what the power of the peer is.
It
That
is.
seems to be really where we can grow and evolve inside of that. Just inside of that, those mentalities, and help our recovering folks live their best lives.
Yes, and on top of that, being able, like you said, being able to figure out where in peer we fit.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's going to have a recovery coach organization or a recovery support specialist organization.
Right.
Some people are going to go and advocate legislatively. Some people are going to do what I do and speak on stages and train and help people develop. Some people are going to go the entrepreneur way, you know, like I did. I don't work for a company. I work for myself and do the best I can. But I found what made me tick within the peer coaching avenue and what still brings happiness to me, you know, at the same time, fulfilling the inside all the way to the out, right? And shining the light brightly for those who need to see it by just showing up, you know?
Wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah. So in your, I suppose you said you started peer coaching at like 6 months.
Yeah.
And then, so you've been doing it quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any like stories that are really close to your heart of like successes
Yes.
or maybe challenges or anything?
Well, you know, I have some major success stories. I have coached so many people in 4.5 years.
I'm sure. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I have trained so many people, 750 coaches. I have trained that are out there walking alongside at least 10 to 15 people.
Yeah.
That's about 11,250 people in 4.5 years.
Wow.
With that,
Yeah.
I have had some experiences, you know.
I'm sure.
You know, I've had a few where there's, you know, I had one and she's not here anymore, but she had 89 visits to the hospital before I met her.
Yeah.
And we spent 3 years together She got her kids back. She got a great paying job. She became a recovery coach. She was doing wonderful. And so we kind of part ways a little bit. You know, once it's very difficult to tell your recoveries, hey, we're done forever, because that's never going to happen.
Right.
But, you know, having that space, right? They have to go find what they're looking for.
As you said earlier, recovery kind of becomes living.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so she was living, doing everything she needed to, had some things happen, got a hold of fentanyl, and she died instantly.
I'm so sorry.
But the craziest part is I have now, being 5 years sober, have had the opportunity. I had the opportunity to speak at her funeral, and I spoke life into the people that were there. We lived. Whether she didn't, whenever she made it, we all gonna be leaving sometime or another.
Right.
Okay, so whether it's addiction or whatever that may be, the gift of permanence just is, right? But I was there and I heard things like, it was only a matter of time, or it was this. And something compelled in me said, nah, you got to go up here. You got to advocate. And you got to talk about what this woman's journey truly looked like. Like, she was on fire. She was moving and grooving. I was with her through every step. And the thing is that when you're walking alongside someone, I mean, you're going through their stuff too. Like, a lot of people don't realize this, but like when you got boots on the ground and you're a peer coach, you're like, woo, what was, is everybody okay? Like, you know, people's stories are wild. And when you are willing to walk with them, you see all the different missing pieces to the puzzle. And as they start to pick up those pieces, it becomes magical.
Absolutely. It's almost, it's a forced shot of empathy.
Yes. And so like at the same time, while I had so much empathy and so much love for her, right? I also had the sadness to it.
Yeah, of course.
But then at the same time, I had like this nobleness to me that was like, oh no, she's not going out like that. We're going to advocate for the person she was and what she fought for, right? All of that happened within less than 3 weeks, where it was just an up and down roller coaster ride, which consistently happens. And a lot of people don't realize this about the peer. One day you could have a peer who has an overdose, and the next day you could have a peer who becomes the CEO of a company, all in the same day.
Right.
And so normally for you as the coach, this is where you have to be completely grounded, right? Because you don't really know where your day is going to go.
Yes, absolutely. That's a little bit of whiplash, I suppose. Yeah.
You get done, you're like, I don't know what happened. You know, my back hurt. So that one was one. And then I just recently had somebody who ended up passing their Colorado Peer Family Specialist. They did their exam. We did some refreshers. He's been with me for about 3 years, and he passed his designee, and he's getting ready to get married. So wonderful story for him. He's about almost 2.5 years sober, and just really on the right track. He's with a great company that still deals with and works with recoveries and everything else.
Amazing.
And he's got his supports. I am still there, and I'll be there as as that person who can help walk alongside him and, not do it for him, but
Of course.
walk it with him,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
wow.
Yes, I have some graduating from school now. I have some who are aspiring to kind of jump into the corporate world and become these great trainers in the corporate world.
Totally.
My coaches right now are they're just full of life, and they've been in every organization we have out here, and I have a few in New Jersey and things like that, where they're just all just doing so well. And sometimes it becomes overwhelming how great everybody does that I just have to take a nap.
Totally. Hey,
I just have to take a nap.
hey, that is a beautiful, blissful sleep, I think. Yeah.
It's a good one. I'm like, man, these
absolutely.
people, and they making me cry, and I'd be like, I just gotta go to sleep.
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. And that's, my gosh.
I love
it's amazing to just see that we recover mentality living in the world. You
Yes.
know, we're at RLS right now, the
Yes.
Recovery Leadership Summit, and it's
Right.
just walking through the hall and seeing hundreds of people who are in this thing
Yes.
is amazing.
And the smiles, you know,
Yeah.
and just the energy, the
Yeah.
the synergy is just that we're valuable, non-judgmental. We care.
Yeah.
We just care.
Yeah.
And honestly, like a lot of what we talk about is so innocently put because we're so honest.
Yeah, it does.
So,
Absolutely.
so oftentimes what we think, because we've been in our meetings and our groups and we talk so openly and vulnerably, right?
Right.
Other people are like, is she really she's just okay with just saying those things? And I'm thinking in my head, oh, you guys don't do that?
Yeah, you don't think? Oh my gosh,
my bad.
That one again hits very close to home. I can so relate to that. The amount of time have talked to folks and they're just totally taken aback by. But I'm just in my life. It's just life.
And they're like, did you just talk about your life like that, huh?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, what? Why would?
Doesn't everybody? Yeah.
And they're like, no, everybody doesn't,
Right,
you know,
right.
or bringing someone in who's an ally to meetings or groups.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember bringing in a really close friend who said, I want to know Sparkle. I said, oh, okay, well, come on. We got to sit there and her face was like, all of you guys talk so vulnerably. She goes, I got to go to the bathroom because they trying to pick on me. I got to go to, she said, I can't do this right now. I'm going to go to the bathroom. She goes, how do you guys do this? Y'all just talk like this vulnerably every day? She's like, I got to get used to this. She said, I probably would feel better.
Yeah.
She said, I now see why you guys are releasing so much and bringing in so much love for yourselves because you're releasing the things that don't need to be there. She said, that is the power of the peer. We release things that we can relate to and talk with and learn how to get rid of this stuff so we're not so heavy. Totally. And if we have people to walk with us doing it, it's just beautiful, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think some of that, some of the perceptions of folks that maybe haven't been as informed by the recovery space, as someone who's so involved in this, I kind of, without having said it, I'm hearing maybe there's some stigma that's still attached in different ways.
You know, there is. And there's some stigma, but there's also some, I want to know.
Sure.
And I love it. And I think a lot of it, too, is because if we trust in our recovery, others will begin to trust in it, too.
Absolutely.
And they'll start to realize it's working.
Yeah.
So how is it working? You know, my brothers and sisters, they don't have drinking problems. But as soon as I came back, after about a year or two, they had millions of questions. Well, when did you start drinking? Well, what happened here? Well, how do we know how can we help you? Well, it was some of the greatest questions I could ever hear because I was like, I want to teach you how to treat me. Because if I can teach you how to treat me, you'll start to learn how to teach me how to treat you. And we can fall in love as a family all over again. Because now we have some leverage. We have something that puts us together in an emotional, empathetic setting that helps us all understand we're just human. Yeah. We're just human, you know?
Totally. So as we kind of start to near time, a couple of things. You're an author, correct?
I am.
Yeah, I saw that you had some works available on Amazon.
Yes,
Small
I do.
Plug.
Amazon. Being a Better Me for Me. It's the book and workbook. I had so many recoveries asking me millions of questions. Yeah. The same ones. That during the pandemic, I was like, I'm just going to make this pamphlet and I'm just going to wait a minute, this is like a book.
Yeah. And
I got to writing it, and, you know, I have 37 quotes that I've put together that are all over platforms. But I used a lot of my quotes in there, and then put 10 tips and tricks to being a better me for me. And then I made the workbook to go with it. And then I sell it as a class and help people become a better version of themselves. My whole agenda for this was that no matter where you're at in your life, not just recovery, in your life, you will always get something out of it if you are progressing, which means that what you got out of it 4 years ago, I read my book. I read it. It's not that long. It's a mini pocket guide.
Yeah.
I read it probably about 4 months ago, and I was like, man, this is some good stuff.
Amazing, yeah.
I was like, I'm learning so much more about myself. And I thought about it. I was like, wow, I feel like I might have wrote a book for the future. And then I was like, oh, well, self-reflection is always in the now anyway.
Yeah.
So it's where you're at in that moment and how real you can get with yourself each time. So I got that. I have another book. It is coming out, and I'm getting trademarked. Do you have the legs to your table? Creating hope to define your light. So I am loving the writing. I believe the power of the peer coach, the keynote, that I did today, it's actually in the midst of a book as well, and I'll make them into a series. And so I'm extremely excited about being able to really write. I never realized I was a writer. I'm definitely not a reader because I fall asleep when I read.
Yeah.
So I'm like, can somebody else read I'm just can someone else read what I wrote?
The audiobooks, yeah.
And then I did do some audio for it too, because I'm a person who just likes to listen to things, and I can really get lost in it. So definitely. I'm extremely excited for that part of my creativity to come out, and then speak it out on stages. I really love to speak, and I love speaking positivity and just helping people understand that you got to remember what you're entitled to and what you're deserving of, and that you're worthy of transformation no matter what you're going through. And that, oftentimes we think we're stuck, but we're not. We just have to take a step back, move fear out of the way, and take a step forward, right? Faith over fear is pretty powerful if you allow it.
That's for sure. That's for sure. So, where can people find you?
So you can find me at sparklelindsay.com. And on all platforms. I am on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and X. As known as Twitter. Yeah. But I'm on all of those platforms as well. So if you are in need of something, need to contact me, please do not hesitate to call. I would say that for the most part, I have quite a bit of people who DM me on my platforms.
Sure.
With help, because just feels a little bit more comfortable. So I really appreciate that, and my website is always available. So.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. So we always end the Faces and Voices of Recovery Stories Have Power podcast with this question. Mm-hmm. What's one small word of advice you have for our listeners?
Be careful what you say to yourself. You are listening. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Oliver. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll look forward to more books coming out.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll look forward to seeing your name in lights in the near future.
That sounds good. All right, my man.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sparkle.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Recovery Stories Have Power. You can listen to all of our episodes at pod.facesandvoicesofrecovery.org. And a big thank you to Sparkle Lindsay for joining us on today's episode. You can find Sparkle on all the social media platforms. We've got 3 more video episodes coming at you, so stay tuned. We release episodes twice a month, once in the middle, once at the end, always on a Thursday. This podcast is produced and engineered by me, Oliver Books. Video, technical support, and website by Chris Aram. Opening and closing music is Come On Home by our friend Chris Tate, and shout out to the good folks at his RCO, Passenger Recovery. Comments or questions? Send us an email, podcast@facesandvoicesofrecovery.org. Thanks so much for listening.